Hi there. I'm Adam Griffith, the host of the Rivercane podcast series produced by the University of Alabama's Conserve Research Group. In episode 2 of the Rivercane podcast, we learn about the environmental benefits and cultural uses of rivercane. We start out talking to David Butler, the Cahaba Riverkeeper in Alabama. From David, we learn about the benefits of rivercane on the banks of streams and the importance of riparian buffers. Our second guest is Roger Cain, who is a citizen of the United Keetoowah Band of Cherokee Indians in Oklahoma. He teaches us about some historical uses of cane by indigenous people, some of the Cherokee language used for cane, and some past and present university research on rivercane. I had a lot of fun recording these interviews with these great guests, so we hope you enjoy listening. Look for episode 3 as we continue our Rivercane podcast series. So to lead off, I heard that you are the riverkeeper for the Cahaba River. I hear the term riverkeeper a lot. What exactly does that mean that you are the riverkeeper?
Yeah, so I'm sort of an advocate for a specific watershed. The Cahaba River's here in Birmingham, Alabama. So our kind of jurisdiction is defined by the boundaries of the watershed. So we work specifically in the Cahaba River watershed and really try to give the river a voice. So we advocate for communities along the river and certainly try to push for practices that are beneficial for, downstream of the communities where we work. So we use a variety of tools. We do a lot of data collection, file lawsuits when we need to. We have a kind of year-round monitoring program where we water quality, both for bacterial contamination and just general water chemistry. And of course, that takes us onto the land to kind of preserve habitat, restore areas along the river where you have stream bank erosion. So a variety of things, but generally speaking, we represent the communities in advocating for the protection and conservation of the Cahaba River.
Awesome. Thank you. That's great. I love the idea of giving the river a voice. And that's essentially what hopefully this podcast can do for Rivercane. We're hoping to give Rivercane a voice in some way. How did you, or when did you become familiar with Rivercane?
Yeah, so it's kind of funny. I think I was, like a lot of people, I think I kind of confused invasive bamboo and rivercane. And so I've been aware of it for a long time, didn't really know the differences. And as we got into the work here at Cahaba Riverkeeper, we started learning about the native, indigenous people that lived in the watershed before us, started understanding their relationship to rivercane. And, as an extension of that, started to understand the difference between some of the native species and invasive species. And in our watershed specifically, we have tremendous erosion problems. So the hydrology of the river has drastically changed with urbanization in the upper end of the watershed. And so it became an important plant for us in planning and thinking about restoration projects.
Awesome. How does rivercane improve water quality? What's your understanding of how rivercane interacts with rivers?
Yeah, so when I first started in this job, we used to kind of think of forested land as one of the best buffers for sediment, nutrient pollution, variety of chemical pollution. And then as I've learned more about rivercane, it is actually much more effective at protecting water quality than even forested land. So I think there are estimates that, established cane breaks can reduce nutrient pollution by something close to 99%. Sediment pollution is similar. The preferred habitat for rivercane is vital in, preventing some of those nutrients from reaching the river, but also to store sediment from flood events. So it allows, when the river leaves its banks and pushes sediment up into the floodplain, the rivercane kind of prevents it from coming back to the river. And siltation or sedimentation is one of the most significant challenges that we face in our river. And as you get down to the lower end of the river in the coastal plain, it's just much softer. So the upper part of the watershed is still part of the, Appalachian Mountains. And then as you get down into the coastal plain, the soils are sandier, the riverbank is much less stable. And so the rivercane really plays a vital role in protecting those stream banks and by extension, preventing the sediment nutrient pollution from reaching the river itself.
Yeah, we've definitely observed that here in North Carolina. It sounds like it's pretty similar down there in Alabama, which is great. Have you observed any rivercane patches after flooding when some of these materials are deposited, some of the flood deposits? What's it like?
Yeah, so we have, and of course, the modern rivers also carry a lot of other things like garbage, right? And so a lot of that stuff gets trapped up in these cane patches. But as you're well aware, much harder to find established patches of cane. So in the kind of prime habitat within my watershed, as also prime agricultural habitat. So a lot of the cane was cleared to make way for crops. We stopped really maintaining any of those cane breaks. So we have, an aversion to fire. Fortunately, through the attempts to restore a longleaf pine, there's a much greater understanding of the benefits of prescribed fire here in Alabama. But a lot of the cane breaks in that lower end of the watershed have disappeared. So fire is not the issue at this point. It's being able to reestablish those areas and, get to a point where fire would be necessary. But we're a long way from that. Unfortunately, it's been very slow to understand some of the benefits of these native plants, rivercane specifically. I mean, as I think about it, we've had some kind of small scale attempts to do some restoration work, but there's not been the resources and dedication to restoring rivercane like there have been for some other native plants.
What animals benefit from the presence of cane breaks, or what are the benefits of large patches of cane on the sides of the rivers from a habitat standpoint?
Yes, I think primarily birds obviously are a huge beneficiary of large cane patches, but you have reptiles and amphibians, larger deer. Typically in the coastal plain, a lot of those, riverside floodplain type properties have been converted to agriculture. So instead of, having refuge for all those species, you have wide, big open fields where you basically have very little habitat for any animals. And so the cane breaks are a pretty vital refuge for really everything that inhabits land around the river. And as I said, so now, agriculture dominates that lower end of the river. And so you have these huge open pastures that provide no cover or refuge. And certainly we've seen a decline in, bird populations, some of the kind of riverside animals that you typically see, beavers and otters, where instead of being able to kind of come up the bank and quickly get into a dense stand of cane, they're coming up off the riverbank into just a big open field. And so they don't typically stay in those areas. So as the river cane has disappeared, a lot of the animals that, use it for food, for refuge, have kind of disappeared with it. So we have, really much smaller ranges for a lot of the animals that benefited from it. And certainly, lots of animals have derived their name from it, like the canebrake rattlesnake. And, the presence of those animals indicates that that habitat still exists. But unfortunately, that's not the case.
Yeah. Sounds like the issues are very similar in rivercane country throughout the southeastern United States and even into the Midwest.
So just in our watershed alone, we have 130 plus species of fish. Snails, mussels, turtles, frogs, salamanders, snakes, lizards, and that's not even getting to the plants, right? And so you can understand that, when the conversation around rivercane has been pretty muted here in the Southeast, to be honest, it wasn't something that rose to my attention really for quite some time while I was here. But one of the most meaningful kind of experiences was we had an opportunity to visit with some Muskogee women that visited from Oklahoma that wanted to retrieve some artifacts to incorporate in art that they were creating along the Cahaba River. And, having the opportunity to sit and talk to them and understand really how vital rivercane was to their whole cultural system was really eye-opening, because here, you think about things like mats and baskets and we just go to the store and buy it, right? Where it was a really predominant part of their life to not only harvest the cane, but also to maintain it so that they had a sustainable source of those materials. And unfortunately, as a society, we've gone a long way from trying to be sort of self-sustaining and create some of these things for ourselves. And so with that, with the, ease of importing materials from all over the place for not just the things that we use, but the plants that we use to decorate our yards and so forth, we've lost a lot of our relationship with these native plants that could really provide, a lot of benefits that prevent the bigger issues of transporting goods around the world that we could produce right here at home.
One question that I ask of all of our guests is, what wish do you have for the species, or what hope do you have for Rivercane?
Yeah, so I think my greatest hope for Rivercane would be that we can restore a significant amount of that sort of historic habitat where people can recognize its benefit and value. I mean, in my watershed specifically, as I mentioned, siltation, nutrient pollution are primary drivers of many of the problems that we face. And we have not found alternatives that are as efficient and effective as Rivercane to protect, be a buffer for the river. And so I would love to see sort of some demonstration sites along that coastal plain in our watershed that demonstrate those benefits, because what we have a tendency to do is sort of over-engineer natural solutions. So as we move away from, native species that function perfectly well for hundreds of years, and we're replacing them with engineered solutions that often have consequences that are beyond our understanding when we, implement those solutions.
We'd like to take a moment to thank the Rivercane Restoration Alliance and the Conserve Research Group for their generous support in making this podcast possible. Thank you.
So we are joined today by Roger Cain, who arguably has the best last name of all guests in the entire podcast. He is the only guest that I believe we will have with his own Wikipedia entry. So you go ahead and check that out for yourselves. But Roger, will you please introduce yourself?
My name is Roger Cain. I'm a member of the United Keetoowah Band of Cherokee Indians, and I'm here to talk Rivercane.
Awesome. Roger, what are your first memories of Rivercane, or how did you become familiar with the plant?
Oh, just grew up playing in it. I grew up on Barren Fork Creek, and it was right there on the creek, and we used it mainly just go play in it. We'd go in there. We only go in there in winter time. That's the only time my grandma let us go in is the winter time. Yeah. And so we'd only get to go in the winter time, and that's what we'd play. We'd spend all weekend long in there building forts and making trails, and then we got older. We started doing grapevines where we would be up the cane would be in the holler down there by the creek, and we'd be up on the side of the hill with grapevine, and we'd make a big old pile of river cane, and then we'd swing out there and land and fall on it. And we thought that was so fun, but it's dangerous. I'll get out now that I think about it. And so that's how I grew up the Rivercane. Now, we didn't make blowguns or anything. We just made forts and jumped on it and played in it, made trails.
Sounds like some pretty happy memories. Where exactly was that again? You said the name of the creek, and then where is that about in the country?
It is on Barren Fork at the Briggs community here in Cherokee County, Oklahoma. And so it was Rivercane is all up and down Barren Fork. And the railroad tracks go right by it.
Well, I was going to ask you, so what are some words related to Rivercane? What do you call it?
Dihiya is for Rivercane, because whenever I first started staying, there was a big old gap from Rivercane from being a kid to being an adult, and deciding to chase out my Cherokee roots with them and everything. So my grandpa is a traditionalist and everything, and so I asked him one time how to make a Rivercane baskets, and that's when he said, "Well, we'll go get some cane that went to play in over there." So I'd go up over the hill, go get cane, and come back. And so he taught us how to split and peel. Me and Shauna both taught us how to split and peel at the same time. But later on, I was doing my master's work, and people asked me about Rivercane. I said, I don't know. And then I remembered that we do say Rivercane in our stomp songs in the introduction. You go, ee-hee, uh-huh. That's the introduction to all your stomp songs. So Rivercane is sung in our stomp songs. I knew that was cane because that's what was always taught. Ee-hee was Rivercane, was cane. So I was asking him, is that how you say Rivercane? He said, well, that's ee-hee is for one piece of Rivercane, but if you're talking about a whole bunch, like it's growing on land or you have a big old pile of it, that's dee-hee, which means river, it means a whole bunch of cane. And so and he put his arms around, that means a whole bunch. So it's like, all right. So it was pretty cool on that, getting that knowledge from him. And that helped change a lot of times about how people say the Rivercane around here, because they were all stuck on just that one ee-hee, stomp song. And so they're all stuck on that, how to say Rivercane. But that was just one piece. And so it's kind of neat how you can talk to these old timers and you can get some knowledge out of them just by one word one word out of it. And it's neat how that works. And so that's helped preserve that part of how to say Rivercane appropriately in the Cherokee language. And so that's pretty neat. And I don't know what the EHE means, like if it's talking about the comb. I've always looking for somebody to talk about that more, about the, even our cosmology part, making the blow tubes, because we use it all over. We still use the blow tube. And I'm always asking people what the Cherokee name of it is. And so it's interesting just trying to pull all this knowledge that's there, but it's not there. We have it, we're still practicing it, but we don't know what it means or what. It's like our stomp dance. A lot of our stomp songs, our introduction, we know it's old, it's thousands of years old. We have to sing before we sing our stomp songs, but we know it's important to our culture, and so we do it. And so it's kind of neat how you can fall into it and can kind of help perpetuate the culture.
That's awesome. Can you tell me what cane was used for historically?
Oh man, well, I'll go with my first one. The executioner that they found here in a spiral. It shows that man having looks like river cane on his head as a helmet, and it shows him with a shield on his front of his body and on his back, and he's holding a shield, and it looks like it's made out of river cane, whole combs on it. And so that's why I like to start first, of course, because that's a cool image, and you can see that imagery from over 1,000 years ago, how they were using river cane. So that was one way in war. We used it with all sorts of weapons and stuff. But what I think is neat about it, we used it for lashing. We used it to gather food, as in fish weirs or traps, or even how to store the fish, with river cane baskets, or even talking about even making the arrow itself to kill fish. You'd have to be using it, or even a spear to kill it. The archaeologists said that it was our plastic of the Mississippian era, and before that era too. You say the Hopewell and all the other ones too, because we had that knowledge of river cane. Then it was our food. It's our medicine. There's a lot of knowledge goes with it for our medicine. How it's used, I don't know. But you can read about it, and you can see that the plant itself is part of medicine, as well as applying the medicine to it with the blow tubes. It was used for our beds. We made our beds out of our walls or floors. It was everywhere. And then we got away from river cane being our central core, but that was our central part. Made us start using steel and plastic and all sorts of other stuff, and that replaced river cane. And so we used it a lot. If you start even looking for how river cane's used in the late 19th century, early 20th century, you can't Google put river cane baskets. You have to put sifter, you have to put winnowing. So that whole terminology you're looking for, it all changes. So it's used for everything. I mean, so much more. You can look at the Asian populations, how they use river cane still yet. And I think it'd be comparable how they use river cane. We use it the same way. But again, we've been removed from our access to river cane, so that knowledge and that technology we no longer have. And that's something that's kind of pushed for, but the main thing I push for is the conservation part, because there's not enough river cane to do all those practices and stuff that I wish we could. But we got to get that plant back to where it was.
Yeah, that's awesome. So that was a great historical answer. How do you use river cane today?
Personally, I use it for my garden. I use it for lighting my hot water heater. You see those historical accounts how they use river cane. It's like I use it the same way. I always keep some dry cane combs around, so if I need a long stick, I can just split it, and I got me a long straight stick. I can do a lot of stuff with that. I use it. What else do I use it for? That's pretty much garden stuff, art, of course, a lot of art.
A lot of women here in Cherokee have these status symbols on their arms with the oak handles and these, very, very nice, intricately made river cane purses. They're very sweet.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Was there anything else you wanted to mention about, your history with river cane, or the words or the language or historical uses, before we move on to the other portion?
No, I just wish we still had access to. We'd have a lot more knowledge of river cane if we weren't removed from it. Like a lot of tribal stuff, the removal stuff really impacted us, and we're still feeling it. So that's pretty much it. Yeah.
Okay. Do you grow river cane?
Oh yeah, I grow river cane, hill cane, switch cane, even some Keetoowah cane. I've got some spots going. Whenever EBCI first purchased the Keetoowah mound, My grandpa came down there and did the blessing on the thing, and that's when he got some seeds. And so I've been growing it since then. I have some places here at UKB land where I got Keetoowah mound here, so I'm pretty proud of that. I have switch cane growing. I just got hill cane last year. I didn't know if it made it, and they made it. It's pretty durable stuff. I have it growing in my yard, and so I'm hoping to get it big enough where see how to play with it with arrows and stuff. I don't know if I'll be around whenever it makes that kind of cane, but
Yeah.
hopefully I will.
Sounds like you have a pretty intimate relationship with Rivercane there.
Mm-hmm.
So, Roger, you're plugged into a lot of different Rivercane circles. What do you see happening with Rivercane research right now?
Oh, I think it's going great. We're working with the University of Oklahoma, quite a few grad students from there. She's studying rivercane, how rivercane, it creates its temperature variation, how the temperature around canebrake is different than around the area. It changes the temperatures, it kind of lowers it. That's kind of neat. And the lower part of the canebrake is a cooler temperature than the upper part. And I agree with that totally. You can feel that. And so I like that she's studying that. I got to get her some more river canes. She's just studying little pots of river canes. She's putting sensors in there, studying the different temperature variances on it. And another one has done a study of rhizomes with us where she's able to look and see how the rhizomes grow in the ground. And so she started replicating how the texture of the rhizomes to make a matting to stop erosion. Another university is doing a genome study. The University of Alabama. I'm really excited about that. Another one, the University of Oklahoma too. They're talking about how wind affects rivercane and what it takes. And so it's kind of neat on that how they're putting in wind tunnels and studying the temperatures. And I really thought the temperature one was really interesting because I really think that's what makes rivercane really dynamic ecosystem in the wildlands because it's a temperature variation and those animals are attracted to it. And yeah, so at the like Southern Illinois University, about what we call it, the trapping phosphorus and nitrogen, that was big. That's really big. And there's I think there's more of a pressure to replicate that study and everything. And I'm hoping more people are going to be doing that. So
yeah, Jim.
I'm just excited about it.
Yeah, Jim Zajac and John Schoonover and Carl Willard at SIU,
Mm-hmm.
Southern Illinois University at Carbondale, did a lot of great research. We're finding that the stream buffers are incredibly important, especially after Hurricane Helene here in North Carolina. The stream buffers also shade the stream and cool off the water temperature. So not only is it cooler in the cane patch, but it can also be cooler in the water body as a result of that, which is going to make some happy fish.
Yeah, and then a lot of these students are doing a lot of mapping of rivercane using LiDAR and different stuff at these different universities. That's great. There's one recently mapped with LiDAR that rivercane is bigger, there's more of it than they thought of, but they didn't really think of it being a big old mono ecosystem instead of a multi. Yeah, so that's really good. They're starting to think a little bit more. More college students want to study it and everything. So I'm excited about where it's going with research wise.
Why do you think this is happening now, Roger? Why is rivercane having its moment now?
It's something that hasn't been studied. Whenever I first started doing studies on rivercane in the early 2000s, there was nothing. It was that Schoonover one about the trapping the sediment and stuff. That was about it, a historical component of it. And then Kozo came around and did his thing, and that's how you're here too. And it's really cool. It's kind of building. It's kind of slowly building. This plant's been here all this time, and it's a really cool thing to study. And what it does, it's really big. And so I think that's what's happened is that people realize how much more of an impact this plant does for the landscape than we ever knew. So I think that's what's helped pushing the whole being accepted back into their heart.
Yeah, Roger, this has been awesome. I really appreciate your time.
I'm looking forward to seeing what you got.
Thanks,
going.
Roger. Always a pleasure.
All right, take care.
This podcast is written by Dr. Michael Federoff and Dr. Adam Griffith, hosted by Dr. Adam Griffith, edited by Ms. Katya Minkina, Mr. Parker King, and Dr. Michael Federoff, produced by the Conserve Research Group at the University of Alabama Water Institute, and sponsored by the Rivercane Restoration Alliance. Thank you to Mr. David Butler of the Cahaba River Coalition and Mr. Roger Cain from the United Keetoowah Band of Cherokee Indians. Special thanks to the Southeast Conservation Adaptation Strategy and Louis Vaughn for the Rivercane Restoration Map tool. To learn more about how you can support rivercane ecosystems, please contact the Conserve Research Group below or visit our website at conserve-group.org and stay tuned for our next episode.